what I want to talk about this afternoon is in the nature of a commentary. And it's about a commentary of people who base their beliefs on what I think is quite irrational behaviour. Blind faith, no evidence, hopeful belief in the hereafter. It's religious people. I'm talking about fundamentalist religious people. Gonna tell you two stories illustrating what I think is massive fundamental deficiencies, and it's not only in religious people, because some aspects of this happen with a lot of other people as well that aren't quite as religious as the ones I have in mind. Okay, story. I once knew a family whose son, as he grew through his teenage years, got more and more interested in religion and ended up becoming quite a fundamentalist Christian, was total believer in literal interpretation of the Bible, and definitely, I'm going to climb even higher, that's better, definitely a creationist and a fundamentalist of the deepest hue. And his parents were quite worried, and I was a friend of the family, and although I was only sort of like in my late 20s, that's still quite young, I reckon, they thought that I perhaps could talk to their son and sort of point out that he might have another think. And that grew into, in this particular evening, lots of people from his fellowship in his church, plus the guy, the adult, that had misled, what I think is misleading, these adolescents into the ways of fundamentalism and creationism. And so we duly met together at the house of this family. Strange thing happened. Two parts to the evening. First part to the evening, me and this guy, let's call him John, the leader of the church group. He and I were just sort of socialising, cup of coffee, just hanging out. And one of the things he mentioned, he asked me my religious background, and I told him that I had been brought up as a Catholic, and he immediately went into a sneer about Catholicism and the Pope. And one of the things he sneered at the Pope for was infallibility. And I agreed with him that that was pretty stupid to think that any human being in any circumstance would actually say something that couldn't possibly be an error. And we had a great chuckle, and we were getting along very well together. For a rampant atheist and a dyed-in-the-wool Christian and a leader who was what I think was misleading adolescents, we're getting along very well. Then we got down to the business of the evening, and I asked him at one stage, you are very confident that the Bible is the Word of God. You are very confident that Genesis creation myth is actual true fact, that God created the world in 6 days and had a rest on the seventh. And I said to him, this is the golden moment, this is the pivot, this is the fulcrum. I said, could you be mistaken? And he said, no, I couldn't be mistaken, because the Bible is the Word of God, and I'm reading the Bible, and therefore I'm reading the Word of God, and I can't possibly be mistaken. And I said, could you conceive that you might be interpreting the Bible wrongly? After all, you're only a human being. Me thinking just like the Pope is, who you were having a go at before. Could you conceive of yourself being wrong? Could you conceive that you might be wrongly interpreting the Bible? And he said, absolutely not. That is the fundamental basis of my faith. And the evening sort of wore on. We talked about other things. And I thought later, and I still think of him today, I'm thinking of him right now, I'm talking to you about him. Would you want to meet a bigger idiot in the world? Would you want to meet a more intellectually dishonest person? Would you want to meet somebody as cocksure and as arrogant as that person? No, you wouldn't. He takes the cake. And sadly, ladies and gentlemen, there are many like him. There are many like him who cannot conceive that they are in error. Okay, I've got another story, but I think I'm almost got my 5 minutes up, so I'll save the other story for perhaps later on in the afternoon or another day. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen, on the arrogance of the believer? Yes, sir.
Is it possible that you are in fact wrong about God.
Absolutely.
So you could concede
yes,
that.
that's the point. He asked that, and yes, absolutely, I could be in error. Definitely, I'm a human being. I try and use my brain to the best of my ability, but I'm not, well, even if I was a genius, I could still be mistaken. That's the point. I'm willing to concede that, and he wasn't. Why can't he? I think that's the point. I could be in error, but, and I say, as in all honesty, I have been wrong many, many times. Everybody knows they make errors, but this cocksure, strutting, arrogant, fundamentalist Christian says he cannot be wrong. That's idiocy.
I have a question, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that the reason he could not conceive of himself being wrong was because he would have felt that he was betraying his God to believe that?
Yes.
And therefore it would be very difficult for him to admit that he could be wrong.
What a strange God that is, that creates fallible human beings who he can sin, can break the law, can go against God's will. I mean, surely that God is not going to punish a person for saying, I do believe with all my heart and soul and mind, but I could be mistaken. That's what I wanted him to admit. And that's what every human being should admit. I might be wrong.
Mr. Speaker, another question.
Yes?
Isn't the very definition of faith the idea that you cannot be wrong? I mean, that's what faith is, the belief that you're not wrong. You can't really ask a person to have faith and then yet doubt themselves as well, can you? That's not really fair, by the very definition of faith.
And I would say to a person who argues seriously like that, so you want to build your life on blind faith. That's just asinine.
What other type of faith is there?
Well, I might agree with you. I would. You can see my hesitation. I could actually argue this because I think everybody believes something without proof. The point is, do you have faith in something for good reasons, or do you have faith in something in the hope of in this case that we're talking about, a hereafter, or a good life, or a reward for your behaviour?
No, some people want to believe not because of the afterlife, but because they want a good world and a world that has meaning and purpose and goodness behind it all, and therefore they believe in a God for that reason.
No, I wish, Mark, you and I were now in a pub with sharing a beer, with lots of money in our pockets so we can have more beers as the hours roll on and the evening draws to a close. I have to stop. All right, thanks ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Well done.